soft sticks.
You know, it's funny, I don't think anyone actually sets out to be an investor. I've always been interested in technology. I grew up playing a lot of video games, which my parents hated. I took computer science classes when I was in college, and I had always worked at startups, but I never really thought I would be a venture capitalist full time until I started angel investing and then decided to start my own VC firm. A lot of people say investing is all about the numbers, but I really believe it's all about the people. When I was first getting started, I would go and have lunch at Airbnb, Uber, Dropbox. I really wanted to get to know folks that were at the last generation of great companies. From there, I wanted to ask them, what they wanted to do next, and in many cases, I wrote the first check to help them leave and start something new. So my first investment was in a startup called Webflow, which a lot of people now use today. And I always say the best investments are the hardest to get into. So I initially started cold emailing the founders. I would make excuses to catch up with them and find ways to help out. And so on evenings and weekends, I would send them names of people that were looking for jobs. I would host dinners and get more involved in the community that they had built. And I worked them into a yes, into letting me invest. A lot of investors joke about deal flow, and I think deal flow is a really fancy term of saying, where are you going to find your next investment? For me personally, I spend a lot of time community building, everything from hosting dinners to organizing workshops with operators that can help companies be successful. And we also recently opened a community space. It's called Worklife Studios. It's in Silver Lake. The reason for that space is we want to bring people from all different industries together. And I love the idea of having a physical space where people can meet. It's not like a Soho house where it's transactional and it's expensive to join. It's more creating a safe space for people to come together and share ideas. I've said before, I think conferences are a waste of time, and connecting with people that you've never met before on LinkedIn is also a waste of time. But I think there's a lot of value in finding ways to get your ideas out there, whether it's blogging, a podcast, hosting a dinner series. I think there's many ways to meet like-minded people and to really build a community around you outside of maybe the traditional forms of networking. I listen to a lot of podcasts. The role of an investor is very much an intellectual one. So if I'm trying to investigate a topic, maybe AI as an example, I'll read many, many books about the topic. I'll make a list of the 10 smartest people that I need to meet in the space, and then I'll craft my own thoughts and opinions around that topic. Investing is much harder than people think because it's not about wiring money. It's about what happens on the other side. It's helping companies be successful. It's knowing when to do what next. And in this moment in time, we're preparing for a recession. And so there's a lot of questions and considerations we need to keep in mind in ensuring that the companies we've invested in will survive. Angel investing is writing small checks, likely in companies that you know already or people that you've already worked with. Where venture capital is raising outside money from investors, there's a lot more expectation, and you're typically targeting somewhere between 7 to 10% ownership in a company. As a female VC, I empathize a lot with female and underrepresented founders. I think we face a lot of the same issues when raising money from investors. We face a lot of the same biases. I remember when I started raising for my first fund, a lot of investors asked me if I planned on having kids. They asked questions that I knew were Not because they cared about my personal life or because they wanted to get to know me. It was more so they wanted to gauge how long I was going to be in business. There's definitely a glass ceiling in technology. I also think there's a very strong glass ceiling in investing. You'll notice that there's a lot of junior partners at VC firms who are female or in an underrepresented group. However, most of the decision makers are white men. And I felt this a lot coming out of the pandemic, where I felt like it was 2 years of folks that went to college together, most that went to an Ivy League school, folks, getting closer with the people that they knew already. And so I felt like it was really harder to get to that next level in my career because I didn't go to an Ivy League school. I wasn't roommates with another successful male VC. And so it's been a lot of ups and downs seeing how close some of these networks are and how hard it is to break into certain circles. For new folks to the industry, like myself, it was harder to catch up with those individuals. There weren't dinners, there weren't happy hours, there weren't really opportunities to share your thoughts and to really, impress them in a way that you could earn their respect. I recently read a book about how college is a scam, and I mostly agree with that if you're going to a school that no one's ever heard of, or if you're studying a major that you won't really find a job with that major. That being said, I think if given the opportunity, I definitely would have gone to a Stanford or a Harvard. I find not having an Ivy League education forces me to have to work that much harder. And so I think a lot of colleges can be a waste of time, but I think there are quite a few Ivy League schools that have continued to really endure. I care a lot about company culture, so I invest in people that really want to build a great place to work. And a great place to work for me means, are we hiring underrepresented folks? Like, are we bringing new perspectives to the table? Are we paying people well or fairly compensating and really enabling them to have, life-changing outcomes? And the third thing, are we really making a positive impact on the world? I think the best technology companies not only create more jobs for people, they also use technology for good. Yes, so when I went out to fundraise for my first fund, I realized that Eric Yuan, the CEO of Zoom, was following me on Twitter. So I had DM'd him, we scheduled a call, and one of my first big pitches was with a billionaire with a beach in the background, and I was asking him for money. And so it was one of the most surreal moments where I talked about why I wanted to start Worklife. I talked about how I looked very different from traditional VCs, and he wired me money, and so I must have said something smart.